I got the court summons on a Thursday morning while microwaving leftover rice for my kids' breakfast. I remember the exact moment because I had just run out of hot water and was heating water on the stove to wash Micah's gym socks. That letter sat on the edge of the counter like a bomb I didn't see coming. I read the words 3 times before they made sense. Petition for full custody. Caleb was trying to take Micah and Naomi away from me. I'm Janelle. I'm 39. I work nights as an ER tech just outside New Orleans. I'm also the mom who uses dish soap to clean school shoes, who measures peanut butter by the teaspoon, who tells bedtime stories on 2 hours of sleep. After our divorce last year, the court granted me primary custody. Caleb had weekend visits and generous phone time, but apparently that wasn't enough. Not for a man like him. He's a clinic director now. Shiny new job, shiny new wife, shiny everything. Meanwhile, I live in a duplex with peeling paint and a kitchen that smells like burnt toast no matter what I do. My car's got more duct tape than paint. But it runs. I run. For my kids. I sat down on the floor next to the fridge and read the petition again. Unstable living conditions. History of mental health treatment. Inability to provide consistent care. My hands went cold. That last part. I knew exactly where it came from. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with postpartum anxiety after Naomi was born. I told Caleb during one of the only nights he stayed home that month. He sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling his phone, and said, "You just need more sleep. Don't overthink everything." He never brought it up again. Not until now. Not until he found a way to use it. I didn't cry right away. I boiled the water, scrubbed Micah's socks, made Naomi's oatmeal, got through the morning on autopilot. But when the kids were finally out the door, I sank to the floor, back against the cabinets, and cried so hard I thought my ribs might crack. I wasn't perfect, but I was there, every single day. I knew how to fix a nosebleed in under a minute, how to make dollar store coloring books feel like magic, how to turn pantry scraps into something warm. And now I was being painted as unfit. That night, I barely slept before my shift. My hands trembled while I started IVs. One of the nurses asked if I was okay. I lied, said I was fighting off a cold. Micah noticed something was wrong. He always notices. He's 10, but he carries worry in his eyes like someone twice his age. "Mom," he said while drying the dishes later that week, "why did Dad say you were sick?" I froze. "What do you mean?" "He told Grandma you couldn't take care of us long term, that he's working on fixing it." My throat went dry. "Did he say anything else?" Micah hesitated. "Just that he had proof from a doctor." I had never been more scared in my life. The only doctor who knew about my anxiety was someone Caleb referred me to, a friend from med school. I only went twice. And I paid cash. That was supposed to stay private. How did it get into a court filing? I called the courthouse the next day to get the full complaint. The clerk emailed me copies. And there it was, an affidavit from Dr. Martin Halder stating I had chronic emotional instability and a pattern of impaired decision-making under stress. My name was on that report. My medical history. Diagnoses I never received. It was like watching someone rewrite your life in pen you couldn't erase. I felt Naomi tug my shirt just then, holding out a crumpled school form. I signed it with a shaking hand, praying my kids wouldn't see the terror on my face. And then Micah, always too quiet when something big is brewing, sat next to me on the couch that night. He looked over his shoulder, then whispered, "I think I know where that proof came from, but I wasn't supposed to see it." I turned to him slowly. "What do you mean, baby?" He looked up at me with eyes wide and scared. "Dad left his laptop open at Grandma's last week. There was a folder with your name on it. I think it's where he got those papers." I couldn't speak. My stomach dropped like I was falling straight through the floor. Micah leaned in, almost afraid to say it. "I can find it again, Mom, if you want. I didn't sleep that night." Micah's words kept replaying in my head. There was a folder with your name on it. I knew Caleb was strategic, manipulative even, but something about this felt deeper, calculated. It wasn't just about taking the kids. It was about erasing me entirely. The next morning, I called in sick for my shift. I didn't have the luxury to miss hours, but I also knew if I didn't get ahead of this now, there wouldn't be anything left to protect. I packed lunch for the kids like normal. Peanut butter and jelly, carrot sticks, and the last 2 juice boxes. Naomi gave me a crayon drawing with 3 stick figures holding hands. "It's us," she said, before Daddy got weird. I kissed her forehead and smiled, but inside I was unraveling. When they left for school, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and stared at the PDF of that so-called psychiatric affidavit. It had the clinic's letterhead, the signature, the diagnosis. Everything looked official, except it wasn't real. I never received any treatment from Dr. Halder beyond those 2 check-ins. I was never prescribed anything besides melatonin. And yet here it was, legal documentation claiming I was mentally unfit. I called the clinic pretending to be a new patient, asked if Dr. Halder was still accepting clients. The receptionist said he hadn't worked there in 6 months. That was my first red flag. The second came when I reached out to a friend who worked in hospital billing. I sent her the document. She called me back 10 minutes later. "Janelle, this isn't a medical report. It's a legal statement. The formatting's all wrong. No CPT codes, no provider ID, and that signature? It's a digital stamp. Anyone could have made this." My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I opened Micah's old Chromebook and started drafting an email to the court. I attached everything: my real medical records, the dates I visited Halder, my prescription history. I wrote the truth, plain and simple. This affidavit is fabricated, but I didn't hit send. Not yet. Because something in me still clung to fear. What if they didn't believe me? What if I made it worse? What if Caleb somehow spun it back on me? Said I was paranoid, emotional, trying to deflect. I closed the laptop, made coffee, burnt toast, sat with the guilt of second-guessing myself. That's what abuse does. It doesn't end when they leave. It keeps whispering in your ear, "You're the problem. You're the mess." By noon, the fear had twisted into something sharper. Rage. I had spent years cleaning up the messes Caleb left behind. Bank fees, medical bills, bruised egos from the people he charmed and ghosted. And now he was trying to take the only thing I had left. My kids. My name. My sanity. I wasn't going to let him. That weekend, Micah had a scheduled visit at Caleb's place. I told him gently, "If you happen to see that folder again, don't open anything. Just remember where it is." He nodded, serious like a little soldier. "Okay, Mom." The next night, as I was folding laundry, he came into the room quietly and handed me a flash drive. "I didn't open it," he said, "but I think that's it. It was called Custody Assets." I stared at the little silver stick like it was radioactive. I didn't plug it in right away. I walked outside first, stood on the porch with bare feet, and let the cold air hit me. I needed to breathe, to ground myself, because I already knew what I'd find. And part of me was terrified to be right. When I finally opened the folder, my stomach dropped. Inside were 3 subfolders. 1, Janelle Medical. 2, Affidavit Drafts. 3, Witness Prep. And in the second folder, 5 different versions of the affidavit. All Word docs, all edited by Caleb Ross. My name, my mental health, my worth as a mother, all reduced to bullet points in a strategy. I clicked on one of the files. At the bottom was a note in bold. "Only submit after she misses a shift or breaks down in court. Ideal window." Late January, I sat back, stunned. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a setup. A full-blown campaign to discredit me, complete with timelines and contingency plans. He wasn't fighting for our kids. He was fighting to destroy me, and suddenly, I knew what I had to do. Not just send the email, not just fight back. I needed someone who could see this for what it was. So the next morning, I walked into the legal aid clinic I'd visited once before. Only this time, I wasn't asking for help. I was presenting evidence. And as I pulled out the flash drive and placed it on the intake desk, I said, "I think this proves my ex-husband is fabricating documents to win custody. And I can prove he planned it months ago." The intake worker blinked, then called someone over. And just like that, the tide began to shift. I stared at that flash drive like it was burning a hole through my kitchen table. Micah had gone to bed. Naomi was already asleep, curled up with her stuffed bunny and a nightlight shaped like a cloud. But I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My entire body was frozen, like it knew whatever came next would change everything. My hands were shaking as I plugged it into my laptop. The folders opened slow, like they were holding their breath too. Janelle Medical, affidavit drafts, witness prep. I clicked through one by one, afraid I'd find exactly what I suspected. And I did. There it was. My name, my mental health history, rewritten like a script for someone else to read. Dates that didn't match reality. Medications I'd never taken. Allegations I'd never heard before. In one file, he claimed I'd been hospitalized. Hospitalized for postpartum psychosis. I read that line 5 times before I could feel my legs again. I had barely survived postpartum anxiety as it was. And now this man, the father of my children, had turned my worst fear into a fabricated weapon. But that wasn't even the worst part. The final folder, witness prep, had a series of notes, screenshots, and even a video file. I clicked it, dreading what I'd see. It was grainy footage, clearly recorded in secret. I saw myself sitting on a bench outside the hospital after a 12-hour shift. My face was buried in my hands. I was exhausted. I looked broken. Then I heard his voice, barely above a whisper behind the camera. "See? This is what I mean. Unstable, burnt out, barely functioning." I slapped the laptop shut and backed away like it bit me. That son of a bitch had been following me, recording me, waiting for moments of weakness to twist into proof. I started pacing the kitchen. Every step made the anger crawl higher in my throat. My body felt like it couldn't hold it all in. All those months he'd acted so calm, so civil. Meanwhile, he was documenting my breakdowns like some sick science experiment. And I hadn't seen it. I hadn't wanted to see it. Because if I admitted how cruel Caleb had become, I'd have to admit I loved someone who could do this. I'd have to admit I trusted him with my life. And he used that trust to build a case against me. But I wasn't that broken woman anymore. The next day, I made copies of everything. Flash drives, screenshots, timestamps. I cataloged every file. I took them to the legal aid office and handed it all over. The look on the woman's face, equal parts shock and horror, told me I was right to bring it. "You need a real lawyer," she said. "This isn't just a custody dispute anymore. This is fraud and stalking." I nodded, but I didn't feel relief. Not yet, because something was still off. Something didn't sit right. That night, I opened the folders again. I clicked through each file slowly. I started reading between the lines, not just what Caleb wrote, but what he didn't. And that's when I found it. Tucked inside the metadata of one of the affidavit drafts was a version history. And in that history, an earlier file name, Draft 1. Halder Affidavit Template EB. EB. Those weren't Caleb's initials. I opened the file's properties. The author tag read, Elliot Becker. That name hit me like a punch to the chest. Elliot Becker was not a random name. He was a senior partner at a legal consulting firm downtown. He used to be Caleb's client, before Caleb opened his own clinic. I met him once at a company dinner. He smiled too long, said I was brave for being a stay-at-home mom, and asked if I'd ever considered stepping aside so Caleb could really grow. I remember that because I went home and cried. I never thought I'd hear his name again. And now here it was, hidden in the foundation of this whole scheme. This wasn't just Caleb acting on his own. He had help, someone with a law license, Someone who knew exactly how to fabricate documents without raising red flags. Someone who knew how to break the system from inside it. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just a setup. This was a conspiracy. I sat in the parking lot of the Legal Aid Center with my hands clamped tight on the steering wheel, trying to get my heart to stop racing. The past few days had been a blur of cheap coffee and anxiety. But for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I didn't feel small anymore. I had proof, a flash drive, multiple document versions showing altered dates and authors, hidden metadata with the name Elliot Becker, a grainy voice recording of Caleb whispering to our son, "She won't hold up much longer." Micah had captured it by accident on his old game device. Caleb never thought to check it. That's what made it perfect. I wasn't walking into that building as a broken mom begging for mercy. I was walking in as someone armed with the truth. My assigned attorney was Gracelyn Torres, barely 5 feet tall but sharp as a blade. When I handed her the folder, she didn't blink once. She flipped through it page by page, lips tightening as she hit the fake affidavit, the silent footage Caleb recorded of me sitting outside the hospital after a night shift, head in my hands. She closed the file slowly. "We're going to burn this whole damn thing down." That was the moment I finally let myself believe I had a chance. Gracelyn didn't waste time. Within 3 days, she filed a motion with the court requesting an investigation into evidence tampering and fraud. Every piece of documentation was neatly packaged, time-stamped, and linked to Caleb. When the next court hearing arrived, I walked in with my back straight. I wore a simple black dress I'd bought from a thrift store. Clean, pressed, and mine. No borrowed blazers this time, no fake smiles. Just me. Steady and present. Caleb sat across the room with a new lawyer. The old one had jumped ship the minute we served the exhibits. His new guy didn't smile. Not once. The judge entered and began the session like usual, but everything felt different. Gracelyn stood up and laid it all out. Clean, precise. Document by document showing how the affidavit was altered, how the recordings were taken without my knowledge, how the signature of a licensed doctor had been faked. Or worse, purchased. I watched Caleb's face twist and pale as the judge flipped through the files. Then the judge cleared his throat. "This court has reviewed the materials submitted. Certain files show edits by an individual not licensed in medicine, namely Elliot Becker, whose name appears in the metadata and draft files." Caleb shifted in his chair. "The court will be contacting the state bar to request a formal review of Mr. Becker's involvement. In the meantime..." He looked up at Caleb, voice turning ice cold. "All affidavits and documentation submitted by Mr. Ross related to the plaintiff's mental health are hereby suspended pending verification. The court suspects organized falsification." I didn't flinch. I didn't smile either. I just looked at Caleb, really looked at him for the first time in this whole case. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Gracelyn leaned toward me and whispered, "It's not over." She stood again. "Your Honor," she said, "we have additional evidence suggesting financial misconduct. Specifically, transfers made to a shell corporation in Louisiana under the name Amber Klein are froze." Amber Klein wasn't just a name. She was Caleb's new wife. The courtroom went still. Even the court reporter stopped typing for a second. Gracelyn slid another document forward. "This is Ms. Klein's tax filing. She reports $22,000 in income, but we've uncovered account activity totaling nearly $200,000 in just the last year." The judge leaned back, lips pressed together. "Mr. Ross, would you like to explain now or wait for the fraud hearing?" Caleb stammered. I didn't... Sit down." The judge's voice cracked through the silence like a whip. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just about custody anymore. This was the start of everything falling apart for Caleb. For every lie, every fake smile, every backdoor deal. It was unraveling in real time. After court, Gracelyn got a notification on her phone. She read it, then slowly turned her screen toward me. An email. Just 2 lines. Ms. Ross, I used to work at Becker Legal Group. I have a recording of a meeting between Becker and Caleb Ross discussing the affidavit strategy. If you're serious about bringing them down, I'm ready to testify. I stared at the message, barely breathing. A bigger door had just swung wide open. The hearing room was colder than I remembered. Gracelyn and I sat in silence, side by side, both of us staring straight ahead as the court slowly filled. Caleb walked in wearing his best suit. His lawyer looked like he'd spent all night reviewing damage control strategies. Neither of them smiled. Today wasn't about custody. That had already been decided, permanently in my favor. Today was about consequences. The man who'd spent over a year fabricating evidence, laundering money through his new wife, and weaponizing my own past against me, now had to answer for it. Not just to a family court judge, but to a state attorney present in the room. You could feel the tension in the air, tight like piano wire. The whistleblower had followed through. She sent over the full audio recording. A meeting where Caleb and Becker discussed creating a credible mental breakdown narrative and securing primary custody through psychological undermining. Her voice was shaky in the deposition, but her words were clear. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they thought she was too broke, too tired, and too scared to fight back. I wasn't. The judge entered. We all stood. Then we sat, and the storm began. Gracelyn presented everything. The false affidavits, the video evidence, the offshore account transfers, the metadata trails, the audio files, every tactic, every lie, every piece of the machine Caleb had built to erase me. He didn't look at me once, but I looked at him, and I saw it. Not shame. Caleb didn't believe in shame, but fear. The kind that comes when power starts slipping through your fingers. When it was Caleb's turn to speak, his voice cracked. He said the documents were drafts never meant to be used, that the accounts were investment experiments, that the audio was taken out of context. He stumbled over his words like a man drowning in his own excuses. The judge didn't buy a single word. I find your actions not only deliberate, he said, but malicious. You weaponized the legal system, compromised the well-being of your children, and attempted to strip a mother of her rights using manufactured evidence and financial deception. Then came the ruling. Caleb lost all unsupervised visitation. He was ordered to pay restitution for legal fees, back child support, and a penalty for fraud. The court referred his case to the district attorney's office for formal prosecution. His license to practice medicine was placed under emergency review. But what hit hardest wasn't the money. It wasn't even the custody. It was the look on his face when the judge added this. Your children will be informed of the truth, age appropriately, under court-supervised counseling, because they deserve to know who fought for them and who tried to lie. That was when Caleb's face broke. Not when they talked fines, not even when they brought up jail time. But when he realized the image he'd built, the one thing he'd fought so hard to protect, was gone. After the hearing, I walked out of that courtroom with my head held high. Not because I won, but because I didn't give up when every voice told me I would lose. I came home and found Micah sitting at the kitchen table, sketching something in his notebook. Naomi was on the floor, building a castle out of shoeboxes. Micah handed me the drawing. It was a tree, tall and steady, roots going deep. And under it, he'd written, "We grew anyway." I've learned something no one teaches you in school. When you've been broken down long enough, your healing becomes its own quiet kind of revenge. Not angry, not loud, just standing tall when they swore you'd stay on your knees. If you're reading this and it feels close to your story, if someone's made you feel powerless, I hope you know this. They're counting on your silence. Don't give it to them. If you've been through something like this, or you're still in it, drop a comment. I read them all, even if I don't reply right away. And if this story meant something to you, stick around. We're building a place here for stories like ours, where survival is honored and truth has a voice. Thanks for walking with me all the way to the end. You're not alone.